Miss Savannah, I assume. Tally bowed deeply to the Ventrue prodigy as she and her entourage entered the monument where their meeting was to take place. Call me Miss, Madam, Lady, or whatever you choose, Hound. Your actions carry more weight than your skill and etiquette. Fiorenza Savannah dismissed two of her bodyguards with a gesture, a flick of imaginary dust from her sleeve. You and your clanmates have done well. We witnessed the burning of 4 Sabbat cardinals last month, thanks to your sacrifice. We're ready to approach the magisters with serious talks regarding your joining the fold. Tally smiled, though his smiles were always false, and caught Savannah's eye. You will dismiss your security immediately. The words cleaved through the Ventrue's mind like a broadsword, wielded without subtlety. She grimaced and hissed at the Lasombra. You think to manipulate me so directly. I am not some thin blood or ghoul to be commanded, keeper. Each member of her entourage went for their holstered weapons. Wait. Tally was grinning now. I just wanted to ensure you were not some weak envoy. I prefer diplomacy with strong characters, and clearly you are that. I meant no offense. Savannah's guards froze, awaiting her response. She ordered them to put their weapons away. Tally bowed again, mentally noting that to get to this Ventrue, he would need to focus on crushing the wills of her servants instead. Snake charming, mentalism, mentis imperium, whichever you like. The discipline of dominate has been entwined in vampire lore since Bram Stoker's Dracula, probably before. I am Voivode Maquette. This is my companion in darkness, Dullahan. And this is our world of darkness, and our look at Dominate. The core book of Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition states, Dominate grants the vampire the ability to control the actions of others, manipulate their memories, and force living creatures into acts they would not perform of their own volition. At its most basic, Dominate enables a vampire to make a victim forget the feed they just endured or enjoyed. At its most dangerous, it allows kindred to enslave entire crowds of kine. This is the beast at its most cruel and controlling. Dominate acts as a bludgeon to enforce the masquerade, create submissive servants, and reinforce the self-awareness of the vampire. When using this discipline, kindred feel omnipotent, although the wisest of them know that this too may be shackles of a kind, slipped upon them by the blood. Dramatic, yes, I know, but not too far wrong. I do enjoy the fact that it is considered a bludgeon, considering the fact that presence would be the silk glove equivalent of Dominate. Dominate has been such an interesting discipline in my experience playing Vampire the Masquerade. My third character, and I know it's strange that I can actually remember which numbers they were that I brought in, but the third character that I brought in to a game. First, I played him in tabletop, and then eventually brought him over to a LARP setting. Was named Christian Faith, and Christian Faith was a Ventrue Antitribu who was embraced during the Inquisition, and was savagely beaten over the head, shovel-partied, if you will. But he was a priest in life. He had no memory of any of that. I actually played a character with amnesia. Why the hell not? And having Dominate for the very first time, playing a character with access to mind control, was a very different thing for me, considering the fact that the first and the second character that I had ever played, both were wielders of presence. My first character was a Toreador, and my second character was a Son of Discord, which are the male equivalent to the Daughters of Cacophony. that would be interesting to see pop up in V5 at some point in time, if we ever get some kind of like lower bloodlines book or something like that. But playing that character for the first time was very interesting. But he was a paladin, so he was more of a physical-based character, and did wield presence a lot due to the fact that he was a priest in the Sabbat. He continued his vocation in the undead realms that he had when he was mortal. But having access to dominate, which I very rarely used, was a whole new thing for me, because I was so used to the subtle machinations of presence and how it works, and dominate is anything but subtle. The characteristics. Most dominate powers require eye contact with the victim. Once they establish contact, dominate holds the gaze of the victim until the user conveys their command or commands, barring interference. Catching the eye of someone actively attempting to avoid the vampire's gaze requires a contest of the user's resolve plus intimidation versus the target's wits plus awareness. I like the fact that it's wits plus awareness to counteract dominate, due to the fact that you would catch yourself when you notice that they're trying to dominate you. So that's very interesting. It is, of course, impossible to catch the eyes of someone squeezing their eyes shut or wearing a blindfold, but that person should be easy prey to other tactics. Using dominate in combat, or in a frantic situation, is limited to people attacking or otherwise interacting with the user directly, as everyone else's attention is firmly focused on their own peril. Makes a lot of sense. I've seen people try to use dominate in combat situations, and unless you have something directly in print, it's difficult to argue with players who are determined to make something work the way they want it to, even if it is at risk of causing the story to become unhinged. Unless the user has supernatural means, such as telepathy, Aspects 5, at their disposal, they must command the victim verbally. The victim must be able to hear the user and understand their language. Without terminal decree, Dominate 5, commands resulting in obvious death or serious injury fail automatically. Subjects roll to resist commands resulting in other social or physical harm, such as undressing in public. Vampires cannot use dominate to extract information, as the victim becomes a mindless puppet while under the influence. For example, the Compel command, speak, results in blabbering word salad, while someone mesmerized to tell what they know about the assassin responds, "What you know about the assassin." Dominate cannot make subjects do something they could not do on command, such as sleep. Ultimately, the storyteller determines what the discipline can accomplish, but they should take care that dominate remains one discipline of many, rather than a catch-all solution for every problem. I have a couple things on that one. There was, at one point in time, I like the whole, you cannot use dominate to force someone to harm themselves without having the higher levels, which actually do allow you to do such things. And there are people who try, who desperately try to do that, but you can force them to cause harm upon others, which is a very interesting situation, because you have to go through their base nature to do such things. And what I mean by that is a standardly non-violent person is going to have more, it's going to be more challenging to get them to do things that are against their base nature. Also, the fact that you cannot cause someone to sleep simply by looking at them and barking the command to sleep makes me very, very happy, because that was the go-to for most people who have dominate. And no offense to the players that I've had in the past, but a little bit of originality every once in a while was a nice thing to see. Also, the fact that you can't interrogate people with dominate is amazing, because dominating someone, as it says, it turns them in, it gives them brain jelly. They cannot answer of their own thought processes, which means they're going to give you direct answers. And I can actually see princes using this to their own advantage to get away with things. Those underhanded princes who will look at somebody in front of the other kindred and go, "Tell me you killed them." And the dominate is going to go through in a very interesting way. Now, on that one, the storyteller could say that the person looks back at them blank-faced and goes, "You killed them," and it would completely bombard everything. But I can see some clever wording there being used to force a confession, but not actually getting a true answer. Dominate cuts to the core of vampiric mastery and predation. Thus, vampires must resist attempts to dominate them. A vampire of lower or stronger generation can resist dominate attempts from higher generation vampires by spending a willpower point, negating the effect completely. That's another cool thing, because I know in old systems, it was you just could not dominate someone of a lower generation. However, if you have players that work well together with this, and they're not just, "Oh, I want to win this game," because there is no winning of this game. There's no losing of this game. There's telling the story. And having the off chance that somebody can squeeze out a dominate command towards an elder without them realizing it, somebody who's able to do it smooth enough, is quite an interesting thing. But the honor system that the players would have to understand and go by would be incredible for that. To find players who are definitely story over character, or the story over the individual character, it's rare. On a total failure on the roll of any dominate power, that vampire can no longer dominate that target for the rest of the story. That's pretty interesting. And I do wonder, I'm a long-term storyteller. I enjoy my stories to arc years. And when it says the story, I wonder what exactly that means to the individual player. I can look up what a story means in the book. The story means that you've got a beginning, a middle, and a conclusion. But to someone who likes to expand their stories to having an ongoing chronicle that can last years, I wonder what that means to most people. Typically, when I see the word story, I take that as meaning a month. And that's for my own preference, to help me keep track of things that I need to take care of. I guess you could go on any given situation, but and I'm actually working on that kind of thing right now, where your stories are interconnected but separated, and not something that I'm 100% comfortable with, but it is something that I'm trying to learn how to do. Dominate threatens humanity, especially if the vampire has any principles involving personal freedom or forbidding violations of human integrity. Using it may incur stains. I like that also, because it shows that it's not just physical harm that can cause you to ruin a person's life. And the fact that it's called out there is good. Now, dominate, the type is mental. It's a mental discipline, obviously. Masquerade threat, low. Barring someone dominating an entire auditorium to jump off the cliffs of Dover, it remains one of the more subtle vampiric powers. Yeah, consider, if you're looking at that way, then yes, it is quite subtle. Blood resonance, phlegmatic. The blood of the submissive or the dominant. Masters and slaves. Captains of industry. Power trippers. Cult leaders. And followers. That's an interesting thing, that it's both. That it's both the submissive and the dominant that can fuel dominate. I guess that makes sense, but it is something that it's definitely something that my brain has to like twist that around to make it make sense for myself. So when going into dominate, what do we think about? We think about the Ventrue, I'm sure, the Lasombra, who are coming into their own power of the Camarilla. We also think about the Tzimisce now, the fact that they have dominate, that they are the ones who are wielding that power also instead of Auspex like they used to. The Giovanni, which now are going back to their old roots with the Cappadocians disciplines, but with storyteller discretion, Cults of the Blood Gods does say that they could take it if they wanted to. But we're looking at all the other clans that are all of a sudden popping up with Dominate now. The Salubri have Dominate now. That their Obeah power, their healing powers are Dominate amalgams. The Dominate has become something that is more than not these nights, and I like that, because the idea of being able to get into and mentally ruin a person, having that potential is what can make a monster, in my opinion. And I think the fact that so many clans are suddenly popping up with Dominate makes a lot of sense in this setting. Because in the past, not that many had it. Not that many vampires actually popped up with Dominate from time to time. Who knows what we're going to come out with next. If they do present us with Daughters of Cacophony, is there a chance that Melpomene could very well be a mix of Presence and Dominate? An amalgam mixing of Presence and Dominate could possibly make up those disciplines. Oh, the Tremere. I completely forgot. But what are they more than just an errant bloodline between the Tzimisce and the Salubri anyway, who both possess Dominate? Looking at the actual discipline now. Level 1. Cloud Memory. By uttering the phrase, forget, the user can make the dominated victim forget the current moment as well as the last few minutes, enough to mask a superficial feeding, or a chance meeting. No new memories are formed, and if pressed, the victim realizes they have a few minutes missing. I like the fact that the ability to cloud memory is like one of the first things that you learn. That is amazing, because the original version of that is just Forgetful Mind, which we do get to see later on in a heightened version of cloud memory. But I can see so many vampires using cloud memory, especially with how many, like I was saying, how many clans now have access to this discipline. I can see that being the bread and butter of survival when it comes to being a kindred in the modern Knights, because making the victim forget is going to be one of the more important things, especially if you suck at feeding. No pun intended. But if you are not good at it, if you are bad at it, and you ruin the kiss, and you can't jump people properly, this cloud memory is going to be a godsend. The cost is free, which is nice. The dice pool is Charisma plus Dominate versus the Wits and Resolve of the victim, which is another great thing, because, again, I love the whole Wits plus Resolve, because it's willing, because Resolve plus Composure is your willpower. So the idea that Wits, meaning you're noticing something, and Resolve, meaning part of your willpower itself, is going towards noticing the fact that you're doing something that you would not typically do, in this case forgetting time. But I love the combination. And I also like the fact that although it's a mental discipline, it runs off a social attribute, charisma. System. No roll is required against an unprepared mortal victim. Clouding the memory of a resisting victim or another vampire requires a Charisma plus Dominate versus Wits plus Resolve roll. Duration indefinitely. I can't argue with any of that. That's just such a great way of having Dominate be introduced to a vampire. Level 1, Compel. With eye contact, the vampire can issue a victim a single action command. no longer than a short sentence, to be obeyed to the letter. It must be possible to complete the command in a single turn. The storyteller decides whether to interpret ambiguous commands in an unexpected or unfavorable way. Alternatively, the command simply confuses the victim and fails. I think I like this a lot better than the old level 1 Dominate, which was a single word command. Stop. Sit. That kind of thing. I did enjoy that. I enjoyed that so much, but there's no reason why you couldn't use that with Compel. I liked it because one of my early characters that I played in a Dark Age game was a nobleman Lasombra. And I took a lot in Obtenebration, as you do when you're first starting out and you think that, oh, I just need to play the creepiest, weirdest power there is. But I never took any more than 1 point in Dominate because I didn't see myself doing anything I didn't see myself doing anything but barking one-word commands at people and treating them like dogs. Sit. Halt. Stay. Come. Like, those were all interesting, fun things for me to do because that character was a pompous asshole. Now, with Compel, you get the more detailed. You do have a full sentence, not just a single word. And in the older systems, it was quite simple. It was just a direct dominate. I can only think of the Dark Age version of this discipline right now, which is the most pompous Ventrue or Lasombra title you could ever give a discipline, which was Observance of the Spoken Word. It takes longer to say the name of the discipline than to actually perform it. So, let's see. Cost free, which again is awesome. Dice pool, charisma plus dominate versus intelligence plus resolve. System. No roll is required against an unprepared mortal victim. Commanding a resisting victim, a victim the vampire has previously dominated in the same scene, or another character requires a contest of charisma plus dominate versus intelligence plus resolve. Commands that go against the victim's nature also requires such a contest. Duration, no more than a single scene. That is exactly what I was talking about earlier when I said that you can't have people go against their nature. Where having an individual who is a relative pacifist just go berserk and start attacking someone is not something you're going to be able to do with ease. You'd probably have to work down their willpower quite a bit first. Level 2. Mesmerize. The vampire can issue complex commands to a victim, as long as they have the subject's gaze and relative quiet in which to issue instructions. The instruction must be carried out immediately to the victim's best ability, and must not contain any conditional actions. If you see Henry, give him the document. This would require the victim to exercise cognition. Mesmerism has not really changed much, I don't think, since the old system. But I think it is presented better here. I like the fact that you can't do conditions, and I'm sure that's highly implied in the old system as well, but it doesn't directly say it to my memory. Cost, 1 rouse check. Dice pool, manipulation plus dominate versus intelligence plus resolve. System. No roll is required against an unprepared mortal victim. Commanding a resisting victim or another vampire requires a contest of manipulation plus dominate versus intelligence plus resolve. Commands that go against the victim's nature also require such a contest. Duration, until the command is carried out or the scene ends, whichever comes first. In the old system, I do remember that most of the disciplines that had to deal with scenes used to be the scene or an hour, whichever ends first. And I feel this is a continuation of that kind of thing, But I do like the fact that it does understand that sometimes your scene just does not end. Sometimes it does continue going, and they will continue to keep trying because their mind is still on that time in that place. That, in my opinion, would be up to storyteller discretion kind of thing, but I do like the fact that it is something that will hold for a good long while. Ooh, the other number 2. Demontation. It's an amalgam of Obfuscate 2. We're walking into a very strange land here because this is when I first started doing anything involving 5th edition Vampire the Masquerade. This was a major point of contention and sometimes just downright anger when it came to fans of Clan Malkavian. And you know what? I forgot when I was listing off vampire clans that practice Dominate. Malkavian as well. But this subtle power requires nothing more than casual conversation, as the vampire's insidious influence hides between the lines and inflections employed. The victim finds themselves increasingly agitated as their inner demons bubble to the surface, eventually drowning out all rhyme and reason. It's not the same as the old Demontation, that is for sure, because we were talking about one level compared to an entire discipline tree. And I can understand why people were upset by this, but it's written well. And it also is something that I could see Malkavians specifically carrying. Now that also brings us back to the deal of the Malkavians joining the Camarilla. To my understanding, the Malkavians were offered a place within the Camarilla under the condition that they dropped practicing this discipline, and the Ventrue would help them to educate themselves into Dominate. That being said, I find it a lot more understanding and believable that Malkavians would choose to drop one level of a discipline and learn Mesmerize instead than drop an entire tree that defines their clan. That tends to manifest naturally. I do not see Malkavians just going, we get to join your stuffy old fucking club, and all I have to do is give up everything that makes our clan our clan? Where do I sign? I don't see that happening. But I do see them go, I can't talk to people and make them stressed out anymore? Alright. I can see that. For the protection and for ending the Anarch Revolt, I can definitely see that happening. Cost: 1 rouse check per scene. Dice pool: manipulation plus dominate versus composure plus intelligence. System: after engaging in conversation with a victim, the user can activate this power. For the duration of the scene, the user may attack a single individual each turn in a manipulation plus dominate versus composure plus intelligence conflict, causing superficial damage to willpower. A mortal who becomes impaired by this power experiences a nervous breakdown or psychotic break, that the shape and nature of which depends on their personality, and perhaps their blood resonance. A vampire that becomes impaired by this power must immediately succumb to a compulsion, as chosen by the power's user. If the user wants to affect multiple victims, they need to make a separate rouse check for each one. Duration: 1 scene. As a fan of Clan Malkavian, and I've played a couple myself, I do enjoy the old version of Demontation, but to be honest, does a player, and I'm asking this to people who played Malkavian a lot, does the player need any specific powers to properly play out any individual clan, specifically Malkavian in this? I don't think so. And I think that this version of Demontation, which is more of a anxiety-inducing power, proves the fact that you don't need to heighten and lower emotions. You don't need to break out with total insanity, which is an awful discipline, mind you. The 5th level of Demontation in 2nd edition revised LARP was horrible. Because it's so out there. How do you play off as a victim of that? Not to mention that this is something that the Malkavian Antitribu were supposed to be known for using in combat. So, I don't know. It would definitely make fun interrogation scenes, but don't know. Level 3, the Forgetful Mind. I don't know why, but the idea of the in front of Forgetful Mind just makes it sound classier, doesn't it? The vampire can rewrite whole swaths of the victim's memories, as long as they can keep their victim's gaze and full, uninterrupted attention. The vampire verbally describes the victim's new memories, which the victim then accepts as their own. This power does not allow the user to investigate the victim's true memories. It more resembles blindly painting over the old canvas. I used Forgetful Mind in tabletop in a very disgusting manner. And it makes me happy to see a more reined-in version of this. Just being able to go, I'm covering this section of your memory is great. Because the old system, and when I say the old system, I'm talking about, I think, 2nd edition tabletop. That's what we were playing at the time when I did this. I was playing an old clan Tzimisce, who desperately wanted to learn all of the disciplines because I was trying my damnedest to become the perfect vampire. And the way that I saw being a perfect vampire was having at least the 8 cardinal disciplines. So everything that wasn't clan-specific in that time. And I ran into a Malkavian player who I was trying to get to teach me Obfuscate. My first mistake. Trying to get a Malkavian to teach me anything. My second mistake. Trying to get that player who was playing a Malkavian to try to teach me anything. She was a pain in my ass and would do anything that she just thought was funny. And I actually dominated her to compel her into teaching me how to use her dominate. Her character was trying to be truthful, and her character believed that it was about dancing. It was a ridiculous premise, but it was something that was interesting to see and play. And she was like, well, you have to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And she's like, then you gotta shimmy behind a dumpster, and then you're just gone. And I was so frustrated. I was so annoyed. So anyway, after that happened, I was annoyed as all hell. I wanted to know how Dominate worked, and I noticed that in Forgetful Mind, you were able to gain an amount of memories from the individual that you were using Forgetful Mind on. They would forget them, you would get them, you can replace them. I rolled the hardest critical roll I have ever rolled then or now that night. I rolled straight 10s on all of my dice. And I think I had like 15 dice. It was ridiculous. But I rolled straight 10s. I erased her entire memory, got all of her memories, and then replaced them with my own. And I was so vindictive, as both a player and a character at that point, that I ruined her character. And I feel bad about it today, but then again, it was also hilarious at the same time. I got the disciplines that I wanted. I got more than the disciplines that I wanted. I had to invest points in them, but I had the memories on how to do them. Unfortunately, those memories all came with dancing. Every single one of her disciplines, she thought, were dance-related. So then the Demontation and the Obfuscate that I got from her, because I already had Auspex, were dance-related. And I foobarred my character. I did, seriously, fucked up beyond all recognition. Ruined that character. But for her character, I had implanted memories inside of her that just completely destroyed her. And when I say that, I mean it killed her. It actually did end up killing her. And what I had ended up doing was informing her that she had to go tell the Prince of the Sabbat. This is a Camarilla character, mind you. She had to go tell the Prince of the Sabbat that the bishops were attacking, and she had to get a coterie of... it's just a whole bunch of mixed up information, which eventually ended up having her executed. It was a horrible, horrible thing that I did. It was hilarious, and on the very few times that we have talked about it, the two of us who were involved in that situation talked about it, we've both laughed at it, though I would not be surprised if she had any hidden hostilities towards me for that. But with this Forgetful Mind, you literally just you paint over moments of a history. You don't get anything out of it. And I do like the fact that it has reined some things in. And I'm sure that has something to do with people like me who took complete full advantage of this discipline and ruined games. The cost is 1 rouse check. The dice pool is manipulation plus dominate versus intelligence plus resolve. The system: the user rolls a contest of manipulation plus dominate versus intelligence plus resolve. Each point of margin allows the user to add or remove an additional memory. The victim recalls the edits vaguely, foggy ideations that can fall apart under close questioning. A critical win creates a flawless imprint, as real as a true memory. Duration: indefinitely. I also like the fact that if you just really, really press, you will break the forgotten memory. And that's just a very interesting thing to see. Level 3, Submerge Directive. When using Mesmerize, the vampire can now implant a post-hypnotic suggestion, allowing the command to remain dormant until a specific stimulus occurs. This trigger can be anything from a specific date to a person. When you meet Roland, tell him these words, for example, to hearing a specific phrase. The Submerge Directive never expires. People can conceivably walk around with an order buried in their mind for years. The user can only embed 1 suggestion per victim. Cost: no additional cost. System: as Mesmerize, though the storyteller might want to make any rolls in secret, there's no way of knowing if the submerged suggestion works until the conditions are met. Duration: passive. I like Submerged Directive. I think I enjoy the original name for it from the old systems, which was conditioning. But Submerged Directive sounds nice. It also has a great way of adding some fun mystery into Vampire the Masquerade. Now, with Submerged Directive, I would probably use Forgetful Mind after that to make them forget the events, but keep the Submerged Directive in. This is very much akin to the old MK Ultra, Jason Bourne kind of thing, where you have these implanted directions, but no way to act on them until the sleeper agent becomes activated. Level 4, Rationalize. The vampire's victim now believes that anything they do under the influence of Dominate was the result of their own free will, and defend their actions, however absurd. Long-term exposure to this power can lead to severe mental trauma in the victim. I can understand that, because when you're rationalizing the fact that you did something that you typically would not do, you start to question who you are and what you're capable of. That would break a person over time. Cost: no additional cost. System: if pressed on their belief, the victim can make a Wits plus Awareness test, difficulty of 5. A win makes them question their own statement and possibly their sanity. Duration indefinitely. I also like the fact how Rationalize is just something you tack on. That there's no, oh, I'm going to throw an additional test to see if I can make him rationalize this as his own thoughts. So this is just part of the vampire's skill coming to the fore. And I like that. I like that a lot. Level 5. Mass Manipulation. The vampire can now command entire gatherings of mortals, and, in some cases, even groups of vampires. The vampire can use this power both to issue instruction and to manipulate memories. Cost: 1 rouse check, in addition to the cost of the power amplified. System: the vampire can amplify any of the other powers to affect a group of people, mortal or vampire, at once. All of the victims need to see the eyes of the user. The user makes any needed roll against the strongest opponent in the group. Duration: as per power amplified. This is another one of those wonderful disciplines that is just an add-on to things that already exist. You're no longer confined to just dealing with one. The funny part is you can now talk all these people into doing something, and they will rationalize the fact that it was their idea. I also like the idea that if you beat the strongest individual in the group, you can beat the rest of them. And therefore, all you have to do is throw one test against that strongest individual, and that is nice. I think that is a good way to keep things rolling and to make sure that the game doesn't become just tests. Because I hate that. I hate it when the game is just tests. Level 5. Terminal Decree. No longer hampered by the self-preservation instincts of their victims, the vampire can now issue commands that directly lead to the harm or death of the victim. Mortals can be made to blow their own brains out, jump from rooftops, or swallow poison. Vampires, with a bit of effort, can be made to walk into fire or sunlight. Cost: no additional hunger cost, but the humanity cost is potentially severe. System: terminal commands now must be resisted. See an individual power regarding roles involved, rather than failing automatically. Duration: passive. Terminal Decree is disgusting, and it's wonderful. I'm not at all saying that I don't like it. I'm just saying that it is disgusting. And I'm sure by now, if you're watching these videos and you've seen my past ones, you'll know that disgusting does not necessarily mean bad. The fact that you can now override the base instinct of survival to have a vampire or a human kill themselves, and all it did was make it so that any test that would normally just be an automatic win, you do actually have to throw a test, is disgusting. There's no additional cost, there's no additional anything. Just throw a test in circumstances where you wouldn't. Now, I don't remember anything like this being in place in the standard 1 through 5 levels of Dominate in the old disciplines. And this is definitely something that I would say an elder should have. But I think the fact that anyone could do it, that a neonate, a 13th generation with a few months of practice could learn how to do this, is just dangerous enough to make an interesting storyline to have a power-hungry individual who does not know how to control themselves wielding this power. That is a plot line right there. And I am glad that it exists, and I am glad that I will have the chance to be able to fuck with people with it at some point in the future. Now that was all the Dominate that you can find in the core book. Now if we switch to the Vampire Companion, we do come across the discipline powers listed there. And on that, we do have one level of Dominate added. And that would be Dominate Level 2. Domitor's Favor. Kindred are creatures of cruel irony, and the name of this discipline's power is one such example. while conditioned with the Domitor's favor. A thrall with a blood bond to that vampire finds it much more difficult to act against their master. Domineering Tzimisce are especially fond of this power, using it to ensure the loyalty of their servants. Cost: 1 rouse check. System: defiance rolls for willful thralls under the effect of Domitor's favor are made at a 3 dice penalty, and thralls may not spend willpower on them. Additionally, total failure on the defiance roll means that the blood bond does not weaken that month. Duration: 1 month. So that is obviously, as it states, a Tzimisce angled power. But I can definitely see a Ventrue using something like this. I could see a Giovanni using something like this. And it's just such a fun gift. Those are the powers in association with the discipline of Dominate. The domain of the Ventrue, the Lasombra, the Tzimisce, the Malkavian, the Salubri, certain Hecata, and others. It's a little demented how widespread that mind control truly is, but since vampires are the predators of the night, perhaps being able to get inside people's heads and move around the things that they need to is one of the things that just comes naturally. I welcome the idea of Dominate for Clan Tzimisce. I'm thrilled that the Salubri, I'm highly amused that the Salubri have it, and it makes sense when you stop to think about it. Dominate's terrifying, and it's meant to be. It takes away your free will. It can be a very disgusting additive to the blood bond. Currently, at the moment, I have a Lasombra character that I'm playing who's quite enjoying the things that he can accomplish with Dominate. He's new to the nightlife, and being able to accomplish the things that he's been able to accomplish has been highly amusing for him. I am Voivode Maquette. This is my companion, Dullahan, and this is our World of Darkness. I would love to hear from any of you when it comes to your ideas on interesting and custom uses for the Dominate discipline, or experience that you've had either as a wielder or as a victim. Thank you for joining me. Good night.